Welcome back. Okay, for this video, we're going to go ahead and start building out the Power BI report. So we're down with the step now where we transformed and cleaned up our data. So we can go ahead and hit this close and apply right up top here. Go ahead and do that. Okay. Now yours might take a couple seconds to reload and to pull the data back, but then you'll land on this screen here once you're ready to go. And this is the step here now in Power BI where you're able to start visualizing and building out your report for your viewers. There's three different things that are available to you here on this section. On the left hand side here, we'll see that we default to the report view, and that's where we'll come to build everything out. But we also have a table view, which will allow you to view all those tables which you just brought in, and you can perform some additional steps here, like creating something called measures, which are certain calculations you might want to do against the data, and other steps like maybe modifying the type of the data types for these specific columns that come back. And then after that, we have something called model view, and I want to take you here. The model view is where the relationships between your different tables exist. How do they relate to one another and know about one another? And this is important because when you start trying to filter down, they call it slice, is another word for it. But if you want to slice or filter your data down based off a certain customer or inspector type, um, that's only going to be possible if you have these relationships created, especially when you're pulling all this different data into your visualization report. So I'm going to walk you through that process right now for this example report that we're going to build today. Um, Quick note on this report: I chose a pretty simple report just to get comfortable with kind of how to go through these steps. And the purpose here is just so that you can kind of apply these same concepts to whatever goal you're looking for in the report that you want to build. But I would encourage you to go ahead and work along with these steps to get comfortable with it. And then, like I said, maybe after this video, you can kind of experiment further. So the first thing you'll notice is you'll see a bunch of lines connecting all your tables. And what Power BI does is it does an auto detect attempt to try to create relationships between all these different tables that came in. Like this is trying to connect friendly name to friendly name between these two tables. Same thing here and so on. Power BI does a pretty good job of this. Sometimes you can kind of let it do it, and you might find that everything's working well. But for the most part, I generally will remove all these relationships and create them myself, and that's what we're going to do right now. And I'm going to model that for you. So if you want to follow along, we're going to work with about 5 tables here for this example, and so I'm going to click and move these and drag and move these around to make this a little more readable for me. This doesn't really impact or hurt anything at all. It's just a visual thing for yourself, as on the screen. So I'm going to bring this environment up top here. Then I'm going to drop the domain master table below it. And then I'm going to be working with these 3 tables next. I'm going to kind of drop these 3 right there below that. And I'm going to kind of push everything else here off to the side because I'm not going to be messing with that for the purpose of this video, but they could certainly be included later. Then we're going to click Manage Relationships up here. And I'm going to Shift Select. I'm going to select everything here by just holding Shift down, and I'm going to hit Delete. And I'm just going to remove all these relationships right here. If I hit Close, here we kind of have a blank slate. Perfect. So now I'm going to start making the relationships between these tables. The first one we're going to take is from the environment to the domain master. We're going to make the relationship between the environment name with each. So I'm just going to highlight this name here, and I'm going to click and drag down to environment name right here and let go. And I'll kind of move this over so you can see the line, but this relationship is perfect. It's a one-to-many, one-direction relationship. It's exactly what we want. Now I need to make the relationship from this table to cascade into these 3 separate tables. And we're going to do friendly name to friendly name for each table. So just again, click and drag. Click and drag. And then one more time. Now the one thing here is we need this to be we need this relationship to go both directions. So there's a couple ways to do this. I can double click on this relationship. So I just double clicked on that line and this will pop up. And I can change this to both. The other way is if I click this line, it might be collapsed over here, but if you extend out this properties, when I click this line, this is the current relationship that's been selected, and I can just change that cross filter direction right here. Apply changes. There we go. And I'm going to click this one and do the same thing. And that's it for creating the relationships. And you'll see here in just a moment, but the purpose for this is that when we start modeling the data and we build the report, is we're going to be using data from these different tables inside of one single visual. And in order for all that data to be able to exist next to one another, these relationships have to be created. They have to be able to relate to one another in these data tables to understand like how they exist with one another. Otherwise, Power BI will get confused and throw an error. And I'll show that to you here in just a minute. So these are the relationships, everything we need. We're done here. So let's hop back over now to the report view. So here's kind of the fun part where you're really gonna start kind of being able to play around with putting the data into your report and making it look good and trying to kind of achieve what you're trying to do here. So I'm gonna show you a few ways to start getting started with building visuals. The first one we're gonna do is we're gonna default to we're gonna show how the default visual works when you pull data in here. So follow along here. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the right-hand side here and open up this domain master table. And I'm going to click and drag environment name, and I'm going to bring that in. Just click and drag and drop it anywhere here in the white space. The default visual is going to be a table visual right here. So these are all the different visuals that Power BI defaults that you can use and that are available for you. And the default one is always going to be the table if you just click and drag something in like this. So we have a column right now here with the environment name. Well, I also want to know the domain name itself too. So that's what this value field is right here. I'm gonna click and drag it into the table, not the white space, but into this actual table right here. Perfect. Let's uncheck that. I'm sorry. So this is good exercise here. If I didn't mean to bring this in, I want to remove it. I can either hit this X or I can hit this value right here. But let's uncheck it and remove it from the table. And instead, let's bring the friendly name in. Apologies there. Click and drag it right there. So I know what this data is. Again, if I click on the table view over here on the left-hand side, and if I go to that domain master table, I can always reference and see like what, this is part of the process. So part of what you have to kind of understand is you have to sort of understand what the data is you're working with. And that's how I'm able to do this and what I'm referencing. Um, so just a heads up there. Okay, so let's click back into the report view. We bring over friendly name. Okay, and let's bring over some more information here. Let's bring over who the registrar is. So we're going to open up this registrar table. And this time we are going to click and drag this value field in. Okay, I'm going to close that up. Then I'm going to open up the MX. Let's do the expiration. Same thing. This is the value, the metric value that came back there. I'm going to click and bring this in. And then I'm going to close expiration up. And then let's go to the MX records and let's bring that value in. Now you probably noticed this is not very helpful that all the column names are like value, 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 environment name. And I mentioned that in the previous video when you're doing the transform steps is you had the option to change the column name if you wanted to during that step. And that's the advantage of doing it then is that this will come in to your tables a little bit better as far as like the naming conventions being used, or you won't have value, value, value like this. But you can also update this right now if we didn't perform that step in the transform. So let me show you how to do that. If we come over here to this sidebar and we go to these different drop downs for the different the different metrics we brought in. If I hit this drop down arrow, I can say rename for this visual. So let's go ahead and click that. And now I have the option to change it. I'm going to change this to customer. Hit enter. There we go. I'm going to change the next one, rename for this visual, domain. And then let's go ahead and just update everything, especially these values. Rename for this visual. This will be the registrar. Okay. And then rename. This is days. I'll say till exp, just to kind of shorten that down a little bit. And last one we'll say is MX records. Nice. There we go. So now we've got this nice visual, this table that we're kind of pulling back the respective data. I can expand this out, make this a little better. I can kind of click and drag it to the bottom. I can pull this down. There we go. The other thing too is I want to mention like how this data is, the relationships and how this data is coexisting with one another right now. We're pulling from about 4 different tables right here, but all this data is existing within the same table. And this can only be done because the relationships which were created. I'm going to perform a step here. I don't want you to follow along, but I want to show why this matters. If I go back to the model view, again, do not perform this step. I'm just going to demo something here. I'm going to delete this relationship between the MX records and the domain master. If I go back to the report, broke. Why? Well, it can't determine the relationship between 2 or more fields. It's basically saying I'm trying to relate data in this table to different tables, and there's 2 or more fields. There's fields within those 2 tables that don't know about one another. They don't know how to relate to one another. So that's why these relationships are one reason they're important to create. So let me just go back and fix that. Click and drag it. Cool. Let me make sure it's it goes both directions. There we go. We're back and everything's fixed. Great. So this is one visual we can build. So on top of just building the visual out, you always have the option to format your visual up here on this middle option right here. And let's go ahead and select that. And this is where you can really start kind of putting your own custom look on this and start playing around with it. But there's all kinds of things you can do. There's some default presets you can use, which can let you kind of change the style for how the table is displayed. You can go change the text color of the values. So I can go say I want to do like an alternating thing, and I want everything to kind of jump around like this. I need something a little darker. You can change the background color. I'd really encourage you to kind of get in here and see everything that's possible. If I go to general, there's always a general tab, and you can do things like you can add a title for this. I can, title for this table, all kinds of things. You can give it spacing. Let's see, you can give it a background color, give it a visual border, a shadow. So, I mean, this is really where you want to go in and give it kind of that aesthetic look, and you can play around with it. I'm going to take that title away. Don't need that right now. So remember, any visual can be formatted. They have all kinds of options in here, and this is where you go to kind of give it its custom look. But very cool. Right now we have this awesome list of my customers, their domains, and some other helpful information about them. Now, I can't interact with this too much right now. I mean, I can kind of drill down on it and highlight things, but there's not much going on here. So let's talk about how do I maybe slice this or filter down to specific customers. So I'm going to click into this white area to kind of reset everything. And we're going to go over here to the slicer right here, this visual, highlight that. I'm going to click and drag it in. Oops. Okay, I'm just going to click it and it'll pop up in the screen. Maybe you don't have to drag it, sorry. So if I click it, it'll just populate it here. And I'm going to kind of move it up here to the top corner, and I'm going to kind of create a rectangle like this. So go ahead and do something similar. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to the domain master table, and this just takes one piece of data into it. So I'm going to go get the environment name, and I'm going to click and drag it into the visual. Make sure you drop it in the visual. Now again, see environment name popped up again. I'm having to go rename that. I'm going to hit drop down, rename for this visual, and instead I'm going to call this customer. So it's kind of the advantage of why you might want to do it in the transform step is if you're going to be dropping this piece of data into multiple visuals and doing it often, and every time you're going to have to rename it this way, that can get a little old. So that's where the advantage of using doing it in the transform step comes into play. This is a filter. I can click into one of these, and now it's going to filter down to that specific customer um, accordingly. And again, those relationships we created in the relationship in the model view is why we're able to do this. Um, I don't like the boxes, so one thing I like to do is I hit this format your visual over here. There's a slicer settings, and instead of using a vertical list, I'm going to do a drop down. There we go. I'm going to kind of collapse that. And now I can kind of do the drop down method where I can go to a certain customer. There we go. So now we have the ability to filter down, and this is a slicer, and this is how we start doing some pretty cool things here. Next, I'm going to show you one other visual. I'm going to show you how we can build a table. Just another way to kind of think about the data. So I'm going to drop one of these in the stacked column chart. Go ahead and click that. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of move this over here in the top corner. I'm going to kind of drag it down like this. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about the expirations data right here. So I'm going to go to the expirations table. And we're going to grab the friendly name. And I'm going to drop that in the x-axis. And then we're going to take the value and I'm going to drop that into the y-axis. Okay. Pretty loud right now. A lot of data, but I'm going to show you some things here. First, let's kind of fix up some of the naming conventions being used here, like friendly name, count of value. So I'm going to change friendly name. Let's rename this visual, and this is actually the domain name, so we'll just call it domain. And then I'm going to do count of value. I'm going to rename for this visual, and I'm going to call it days till exp. Sorry, that got kind of covered up there. Days till expiration. Now, something you're noticing here probably is, well, they're all ones. That's odd. What is this? Why does it look like that? And if we hit this drop down arrow, what it's doing right now is it's putting a count of all those values. Well, let's go look at the actual data type for these, and I'm going to explain why this is behaving this way. So we're going to move over to this tab right here, table view. Let's jump over here. And let's move into that table that we're working with right now, the domain expiration table. And let's click value. This is the culprit. If we look up here, the data type for this value column is set to data type of text. Text, it doesn't know how to summarize or anything. So it's just going to, the way it's going to aggregate that is going, or to count that is it's just one entry of text. It's just saying there's one of these values exist for each of those domains. So in order to actually display like what we really want to see, the days till expiration, which is what this output is giving us, is I need to hit this drop down and move this to a whole number. We're going to change the data type like this. So go ahead and do so. Yep, hit this yes. Again, this is where if you perform this step you could have done the same step in the transform and done it ahead of time, and then you would not have to come here. There's always that kind of there's two different ways to do it, really. I would have preferred to do it in the transform step, but for demo purposes, I wanted to kind of show you where there's different ways you manipulate this. But now that we changed this to a whole number for its data type, let's hop back over to the visual. Right here where it says, let's hit that drop down again on the days till expiration. And now we have some different options here for how do we want to display this data. Since it's only one value coming back for each of those data points, we could really choose any of these, but I'm just going to choose some. Okay. And now we're getting the actual days till expiration for all these domains. Well, let me show you another kind of cool advanced thing you can do and why, like, okay, there's so much in here. I don't know if I necessarily want to show all these domains or I care about all these that are not expiring for over 1,000 days. That's where these filters come into play. You can filter different things. You can apply filters to the whole page or just to specific visuals. You can kind of see how you have those options here, but we're going to apply a filter just to this visual. So again, make sure you have this visual selected and that you popped out this filters pane here. And we're going to go to the days till expiration drop down here. And it already defaults to is less than. That's perfect. And I'm going to type in 120 and hit apply filter. So now I'm only showing the domains that are set to expire in the next 3 months. Now you may have domains that are even coming up even sooner. So you can put this to whatever. I don't think I have any less than 30 if I look at this chart, but if I hit 30, it's just going to be blank. But you can go down to 7, whatever's more pertinent to you. But I'm going to use 120 for demo purposes. Now when I publish this report, and you'll see this in a later video, and the way way a user would interact with this online after it's published is this visual option will be available to them to manipulate if you want them to. If you just leave it like this, they could go pop this out and they can change the field however they want to visualize the data. If you did not want them to do that, if this was a visual you wanted to lock in place and not allow a user to modify, that's what this lock filter does, is that when you publish it when you publish it, that later on when a reader or a viewer is looking at the report, they don't have the ability to manipulate this. We can leave it unlocked. It's not a big deal, but that option's there for you. I'm going to close this pane down. And another thing I want to show you is that I think this looks better is if you hit these three dots. I can sort this axes and I can sort it as ascending instead. And now on the very left-hand side, I can see like who's coming the soonest for expiration versus the furthest away. So that option's there for you as well. The names are down here. Sometimes they're kind of cut off, just depending on how long they are. Again, you can format this visual. I can go to the y-axis. I can go to the values here, and you can change. Whoops, I'm sorry. I think that should have been the x-axis. I moved too quick there. Let's close that up. I can go to the x-axis. Here's the values, and I can maybe make that a little smaller to make that kind of fit, or bold it to make it a little more readable. But you can modify those as well. I'll show you one other thing I like here too is if I go to the data labels and I turn those on, that'll actually display whatever, so I don't have to highlight it over it. It'll actually display what that number is if I turn those on. And I always like to position them on the inside end, which means it's going to put it right there on the inside end of the block. But this is, again, the formatting step. This is where you can really customize and make everything look how you want it. You can change the color of these bars. It all sits in here. Okay. Awesome. So I threw a lot at you, but hopefully you're catching on that the idea here is that these visualizations here is where you pull these out, you start dropping the data fields in, and this is where you start kind of building everything out and for your partners and for the people who you're going to be sharing this with to view it. We're going to stop here, and my recommendation, please, is if you go ahead and save a copy of this report as it exists right now for the next video, you'll be able to continue on. But after you save that copy, I would encourage you to kind of experiment a little bit here and just play around with bringing more data in and try to kind of break this and just get comfortable with how you visualize these reports. But in the next video, we are going to pick it up from here as far as the state of this report as it is now. And I'm going to go into how do you publish this report and make it viewable so that others can see it. All right, thank you. I'll see you in the next one.